By now, I'm sure we've all seen or at least heard of The Hunger Games, the New York Times best-selling book series and one of the most successful movie franchises in the world, with performances from Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Liam Hemsworth, and me? When I was younger, I was an extra in The Hunger Games. Now, I'm sure we're all wondering, how did that happen? I am also wondering that. It still does not feel like a real thing that happened, but it did somehow. It all started when my mom picked me up from school one day and asked if I wanted to be in a movie, to which I responded yes, because what child doesn't want to be in a movie? From there, we drove to a mall near my house and just handed in a couple headshots and like measurements and stuff like that to see if I would fit the type that they were looking for. At this time, we had no idea what movie this was or what I was auditioning for. They hadn't released the name of it yet, and it was under like some code name so that people couldn't figure it out. We weren't actually told what the name of the movie was until I got the call back that said that I had been cast in it. After receiving the call back, we had to wait a few weeks before filming actually started, and during that time, I went to a fitting where they figured out what outfit I was going to be wearing and determined if I needed to do any hair and makeup. And in that process, they actually chopped most of my hair off. I think at the time my hair was like down to here, and obviously, if you look at the shot of me in the movie, my hair is not that long. It's about right above my shoulders. After all that was taken care of, it was time to begin filming. We started our days waking up at 5 a.m. to go drive to this random Christian thrift store in the middle of nowhere, where we got loaded onto charter buses that would take us to set. I was an extra in the District 12 reaping scene, and for that, we all got to pretty much choose where we stood on the first day, and that was where we were going to stay for the remainder of the filming process. I was determined to be visible in this movie. I was going to do whatever I could to make sure you could see me at least a little bit in the final cut. Now, I knew that if I was going to do that, I had to do whatever I could to make my way to the front of my section. As soon as they brought us onto set and told us to find our spots, I booked it to the front. I'm not gonna say any elbows were thrown, but I'm not gonna say they weren't. And lo and behold, I made it to the front. And I'm lucky that I stayed there. After we had gotten our spots, the director came through and moved a couple people around if they were like too tall to be in the front row. Now I will say this, I'm pretty sure by the end of it, I was the tallest person in the front row. Which is a little bit shocking because I'm not a very tall person. Not entirely sure how I pulled it off, but I'm not gonna complain about it either. Now I want you to remember, this was for the reaping scene. Naturally, when you shove a bunch of kids together in really hot heat for really long days, some weird stuff's gonna happen. One day when we were walking from the prep tents over to set where filming was, this kid in front of me took a styrofoam cup that he was holding and suctioned it onto his elbow so it wouldn't fall off and called it a weenus cup. Now at the time, I had my own styrofoam cup and I was getting a little tired of holding it. So I saw him put the cup on his elbow and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I'll put my styrofoam cup on my elbow too so I don't have to carry it anymore. The kid saw it, pointed at me, and yells, "Look, a weenus cup! I've started a fad!" To which I responded by immediately removing the styrofoam cup from my elbow and moving on with my day. On the second day of filming, a big storm rolled through, but it didn't start actually raining until they had already taken all of the kids over to set. You can't really film what is supposed to be a sunny outdoor scene in the middle of a thunderstorm. It effectively halted production. The storm was pretty bad, so we couldn't just walk back from set to the tents. So they put all the kids in this warehouse. It had like lights and food and fans and everything to keep us cool because once again, it was hot as frick. Everything was all fine and good. We were just waiting to see if we could resume filming at some point, and then the power went out. Luckily, they did have a few emergency floodlights in there, so you could still see a bit. It definitely wasn't as good as like the actual overhead lightings, but you know, you take what you can get. I had sat myself under one of the flood lamps because I was reading a book at the time. Wouldn't you guess it? It was The Hunger Games for probably the second or third time. Now, eventually, this girl walks over to me and says, "Hey, my friend over there thinks you're cute. Do you want to come hang out with us?" And she pointed back at like a group of kids our age all hanging out together. And I responded with, "Nah, I'm good reading my book." And she was like, "Okay, well, you can come hang out with us if you want to later." I was like, "Yeah, okay, thanks." I didn't. I just continued reading my book in peace. I do think at one point the boy like did walk over to me and try to strike up a conversation about something, but I remember just being totally uninterested and just like wanting to read, even though I had already read the book before. Eventually the storm did clear up enough for us to go back to the tents, and they just ended production early for that day. As compensation for the short workday, they gave us lottery tickets. I'm not really sure if a bunch of 12-year-olds have uses for lottery tickets, but what do I know? Now, as I've mentioned a couple times, it was really hot. I'm talking high 90s, low hundreds hot. Now, the extreme heat and the long days and the thick clothing we were wearing led to some issues. I did have to get treated for heat exhaustion once. That was a fun time. I told one of the staffers that I wasn't feeling great and I felt like I was gonna pass out, you know, as one does when you start overheating, and as a few people did. They took me off set and they brought me back to one of the side areas where the like main actors go in between takes and sat me in a chair. Little did I know that this chair belonged to none other than Jennifer Lawrence. She eventually came in and I got moved to a different chair, but then Jennifer Lawrence and Liam Hemsworth sat directly in front of me. Now my mom's back here with me, and I'm just sitting in this chair completely delirious, trying not to pass out, and my mom just strikes up a conversation with the two of them, while I'm like sitting there with a fan blowing on me, holding cold compresses to my wrists, just like totally out of it. I'm obviously not at all processing what's happening. I'm aware that they are there. I have no idea what the conversation was. I'm too out of it to do anything about it. There was another time that I had just asked for water because I didn't happen to get it the last time they brought it around, but because of the heat and with people like getting sick from the heat, they went ahead and pulled me off set just to be safe. Now, instead of bringing me to that side area again, they brought me to a charter bus with air conditioning, where I sat and watched The Karate Kid for about half an hour. So that was fun. Fast forward to when the movie comes out a few months later, or like a year later. I don't remember. Some amount of time later, the movie comes out. And one of the other extras rented out like an entire movie theater, and we did like a whole red carpet extras premiere, which was super fun. Everybody dressed up as either someone from the district that they were cast in or someone from the Capitol. I went with Capitol. We're not gonna talk about my outfit. That was a really fun experience. The theater was super lively. Everyone cheered when they saw themselves on screen, and everybody else would get really hyped for them, and it was super cool. And then that is where I thought the excitement would end. Everybody would enjoy the movie. Everything would be fine. And I would just continue on. But oh boy, was I wrong. The movie blows up, becomes a huge global success, and the internet gets a hold of it, and gets a hold of my face, and then memes my face. Unfortunately, I cannot find the original meme. There's actually a couple of them. They were both pretty much exactly the same, and I don't really feel like digging through 11 years of Tumblr archives to try to find it. However, I do remember exactly what it was, and I'm going to give you a mostly accurate recreation of what it was. It was a screenshot of my face, obviously, but it was a shot of me kind of like squinting and biting my lip a little bit. Now, I was squinting because the sun was in my eyes. I don't know why I was biting my lip, but the squinting was because of the sun. And they put a caption above my head that said, "Oh my god, Peta's so sexy." I think that went around on Tumblr and Instagram, and there were like a couple different versions of it, which is why I'm so annoyed that I can't find it. Because I remember distinctly that there were like two versions. There was one that was just me, and there was one where they took like a shot of the crowd and memed a bunch of people. There was one girl, I remember she was behind me and she was like looking at her nails, and that shot said like, "Oh, fuck this reaping, I gotta get my nails did." I found that one. But yeah, I guess that's part of my legacy now.